We are back with a Fox News alert. The weekly Jobless claims just released 2.98 million Americans filing for unemployment last week as the economy reels over the coronavirus, Brian.
Right. This is higher than the economists predicted, but it's down from over 3 million claims the previous week. We're at 36 million Americans who have filed for unemployment since the start of the pandemic 8 weeks ago. And they say already 100,000 small businesses are down for the count. That is just before they even try to reopen and maybe realize they can't. Let's bring in South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. We have a lot to discuss, but first I want you to comment on this. They expect unemployment to go up as high as 25%. Senator, what's your reaction to this number?
Well, I think it's just, unfortunately, what was required to save a couple million people from dying. There's no worse news that I've lost my job. My business has had to close because of mitigation. I can't get work. That's a terrible blow to that family. The only thing worse is to be told your loved one just died of the coronavirus. This is the world that President Trump lives in. He had to shut the economy down to keep a couple million people from dying. The economy will come back, but those who have passed away won't come back. And these are the choices we have.
Okay, let's talk about the unmasking, because the list of names was made public yesterday, and let's pull up some of the people that were requesting unmasking. You have Joe Biden, James Comey, John Brennan, James Clapper, Samantha Power. She requested 7 times, and Dennis McDonough, who is the chief of staff. I have so many questions for you. Why were there so many people requesting this unmasking? Why wouldn't just one person request it? And tell us about the process and your reaction to this.
Well, number one, why are they asking to unmask the incoming national security advisor of the Trump administration? Why do you have the outgoing administration trying to follow conversations of the incoming administration? That is outrageous. General Flynn had every right to be talking with the Russians about policy differences they have with the Obama administration. He could talk to anybody he wanted to talk to about his new job. I guarantee you that every incoming administration during transition reaches out to foreign governments. I doubt that most outgoing administrations spy on them. So this is an outrage. It's at least unethical, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. They had no business listening to anything General Flynn was saying about Trump policy.
Right. I mean, I imagine Michael Flynn might have had a different conversation with Israel than maybe Susan Rice did, because they seem to be butting heads with Israel. Hey, keep your powder dry. It's going to be a lot different when you take over. Maybe Michael Flynn didn't realize there's nothing wrong with that. But Senator, you know the law. There was nothing wrong with them unmasking. So for people to say unmasking means up to something diabolical, you can't put those two together. Senator Grassley didn't.
Well, see, here's what I would say. You can request an unmasking of an American citizen who's on the other end of a conversation with a foreign agent, but you have to have a national security reason. Here's the concern, that if you don't have a national security reason, you're basically spying or eavesdropping on a political opponent. They hated Flynn. They wanted him to be fired before he ever got the job. Was this an effort to undermine Flynn, or was it really about our national security? I talk to foreign leaders all the time about my differences with Obama foreign policy. When President Trump wanted to withdraw from Syria, I got on the phone and talked about everybody in the Mideast. If I find out they're listening to my conversation and reporting back to the White House what I'm saying to foreign leaders, that violates separation of powers. This is a big deal. What is the national security reason to unmask General Flynn in transition? I can't think of one, but I do believe, given their behavior, they're looking to get rid of Flynn. And if they used our intelligence apparatus to basically act on a political vendetta, that's chilling to every American and would be very wrong.
Well, let's go to the, Steve always calls it the Wayback Machine, and show you this flashback montage of testimony from Comey, Clapper, and Brennan back in 2017.
You didn't say one way or another whether even there's an investigation underway. correct. Especially in a public forum, we never confirm or deny a pending investigation.
Fact is, the content of the calls is what matters.
Do you have any knowledge of what the content of the call was?
I don't.
Did either of you ever request the unmasking of Mr. Trump, his associates, or any member of Congress?
Yes, in one case I did. That I can specifically recall, but I can't discuss it any further than that.
Do you recall any U.S. ambassadors asking that names be unmasked?
I don't know. Maybe it's ringing a vague bell, but I could not answer with any confidence.
So Samantha Power was also asked about it, and this is what she said. Anytime a U.S. person or entity's name came to me, disclosed or annotated, or where I requested it, and it came back, I never discussed it with another member of the human race. I have no recollection of making a request related to General Flynn. I have never leaked classified information. I have never leaked names that have come back to me in this highly compartmented process. I have, in fact, never leaked even unclassified information. What do you think when you hear those sound bites from 2017 and you hear what she said?
Well, somebody leaked to the Washington Post the conversation between General Flynn and the Russian ambassador during transition. She says it wasn't her. But even more chilling, Trey Gowdy asked Samantha Powers, he showed her a chart where she had made over 200 unmasking requests, and her answer was, I didn't make nearly that many. I didn't make that many unmasking requests. So here's the question. If she didn't make those requests, who did under her name? This stinks to high heaven. And again, you have to have a national security reason to unmask an American citizen who's involved in a conversation with a foreign entity. It can't be for political curiosity or for political revenge. This stinks to high heaven, and what they're about to do to General Flynn in federal court is the most disturbing thing I've seen as a lawyer in decades. I'll be glad to tell you why.
Yeah, in a second. At first, I want to go back to 2017 when you had a chance to ask James Clapper and Sally Yates about these unmasking issues. Let's watch.
Let me ask you this. Did anybody ever make a request to unmask the conversation between the Russian ambassador and Mr. Flynn?
And again, Senator, I can't answer a question like that
Mr.
would call
do you
for
know if
classified
that was
information.
the case?
I don't. And
Is there a way to find that out?
Well, in another setting, it could be discussed.
But there is a record somewhere of who
Sure.
would make a request to unmask the conversation with General Flynn and the Russian ambassador.
Well,
If one was made, there'd be a record of it.
I can't speak to this specific case, but I can generally comment that in the case of 702 requests, yes.
So what is he not saying, and what is he saying in that, now that you know the answer?
Right. Well, this is a very important exchange because I read in the Washington Post that on January the 12th, David Ignatius wrote about a conversation between General Flynn and former Russian ambassador in December. They were talking apparently about a different attitude towards sanctions. Obama imposed some sanctions on Russia as it was going out the door. They were pretty light, to be honest with you, for interfering in our election. And I think the line of attack was that Flynn was going to tell the Russians, we're going to have a new start here. Don't retaliate. He had every right to talk to the Russians about the Trump view of how to engage the Russians. The Obama administration had no right to unmask that conversation because there's no legitimate national security purpose here. The Logan Act does not apply to me as a senator. If I want to call some foreign government and register my disapproval with the administration's foreign policy, I'm not committing a crime. I'm not undercutting foreign policy of the administration. I'm able to speak for myself as a United States senator. So the incoming administration has to be able to conduct business without being spied on by the outgoing administration.
You're right. You're right. Real quickly, we wanted to ask you about Judge Sullivan. What's your response to what he's doing?
I am very concerned about what I see here. This Judge Gleason's being appointed as an amicus for the court. Here's the theory of the case. They're going to argue, apparently, that when General Flynn pled guilty and changed his plea, they're going to hold him in contempt of court because when he pled guilty, now he's saying he wants to withdraw his plea. He must have lied to the court. Here's the one thing we can never tolerate. If the government is withholding evidence in your case that's exculpatory, the court needs to allow you to change your plea based on advice of new counsel. So to deny General Flynn the ability to change his plea because the government withheld exculpatory evidence is rewarding bad behavior by the government, and to punish him for following advice of a new lawyer is unconscionable. This happens in America all the time. Some kid is charged with robbing a store or stealing a car, and they find out the cops were a little bit shady. They allow the kid to withdraw his plea and get a fair shake here. So I hope and pray that they're not going down the road of trying to punish General Flynn for changing his plea because the government withheld evidence in his case. That would be so wrong.
It would be, but I think that's if you look at this other judge, it looks like the road they're heading. Senator Graham, we'll talk to you again. Thanks so much.
Beyond belief if that happened. Thank you.
I agree. Unbelievable. Thanks, Senator.
Thanks,
Meanwhile,
Senator.
straight